Time. We think of it as the most fundamental thing in our lives. It moves forward, relentlessly, shaping everything. We live in it, we measure it, we structure our existence around it. But what if it wasn't real? That's not just a philosophical question. It's a serious debate in physics, because as much as time feels like a concrete thing, the deeper we look, the stranger it becomes. Welcome to Parallel, a mix of storytelling and thought-provoking what-if scenarios, combining narrative fiction and analysis that includes real-world science, philosophy, and potential real-world implications. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment so that you do not miss out on the next episode. Because, one reality, says T-Boom, is never enough.
Mission log. I have no idea what day it is. Maybe it's still the same day I left, or maybe 1,000 years have passed. I keep looking at the clock on my console, but it won't change. Or I won't change. I sent a message to the station hours ago. Or seconds ago. Maybe I haven't sent it yet. I don't know anymore. I ran another diagnostic. The ship's systems are fine. That's the terrifying part. The clocks are running. The instruments say everything is normal, but I know that's not true. Out here past the last navigation beacon, past the last known gravitational well, past anywhere anyone has ever been, time feels like it's slipping. I can see the stars outside the windows stretching and warping, like I'm moving at impossible speeds. But the ship says I'm barely moving at all. I think I'm stuck, not in space, in time.
Dr. Carter, we just got your last transmission before you even sent it. Something's wrong with time where you are. You have to turn back.
The first big crack in our idea of time came with Albert Einstein. Yes, this fellow here, his theory of relativity changed everything. Before Einstein, people thought time was absolute, something that ticked forward at a fixed rate, the same for everyone, everywhere. But relativity showed that's not true at all. Time isn't separate from space. They're part of a four-dimensional fabric called space-time. And space-time is flexible. The faster you move, the slower time passes for you compared to someone at rest. If you were traveling at near the speed of light, a few minutes for you might be years for someone on Earth. This isn't just theory, we've proven it. Astronauts on the International Space Station, moving at 28,000 kilometers per hour, actually experience time slightly slower than we do. When they return to Earth, they're nanoseconds younger than they would have been if they'd stayed. Gravity does the same thing. The stronger the gravitational pull, the slower time moves. This has also been tested. Precise atomic clocks tick slightly slower on the surface of the Earth compared to those in orbit. And if you fell into a black hole, well, to someone watching from a distance, you'd appear frozen in time, never quite crossing the event horizon. So, time, at least as we experience it, isn't universal. It's relative. That alone is weird enough. But it gets even stranger. At the smallest scales, the realm of quantum mechanics, time starts to lose meaning entirely. The equations that describe fundamental particles don't need time. In many of these equations, time just isn't there. The laws of physics work perfectly without it. Some physicists believe that time isn't fundamental at all, but an emergent property, something that only appears when you look at things from a certain scale, like how temperature emerges from the movement of individual atoms. One of the most radical ideas comes from Julian Barber, a theoretical physicist who suggests that time doesn't actually exist. According to Barber, the universe is made up of an infinite number of nows, snapshots of moments like frames in a film. And what we experience as time is just our consciousness moving from one frame to another. In this view, the past and future aren't really different from the present. Every moment just is. If that's true, then our sense of time flowing is just an illusion. The arrow of time, the thing that makes us feel like there's a before and after, might not be real at all. And yes, there are several documented cases of people experiencing time differently due to psychological, neurological, or even relativistic effects. Here are a few fascinating examples. Near-death experiences, or NDEs. Many people who have had NDEs report time slowing down or stopping altogether. Some describe reliving their entire lives in a few seconds or perceiving events in extreme slow motion. The bullet time effect, or tachypsychia. In high-stress situations, such as accidents or combat, people often report time slowing down dramatically. This is due to the brain's heightened processing speed in fight-or-flight mode. A famous example is David Eagleman's experiment in which he had people fall from a great height onto safety nets, of course, he's not a monster, and found they perceived the fall in slow motion. Isolation experiments. In 1962, French scientist Michel Siffre lived in a cave without clocks or sunlight for 2 months. When he emerged, he thought only 35 days had passed. His perception of time had significantly slowed down without external cues. And of course, dreams and time perception. In dreams, people often experience events that feel like they take hours or days, even though REM sleep cycles only last around 90 minutes. Some experiments suggest the brain processes time differently when dreaming. Of course, that raises a huge question. No, not why my boss always thinks I am late to work. If time isn't real, why does it feel like it's moving forward? Why do we remember the past, but not the future? One explanation comes from entropy, the idea that the universe naturally moves from order to disorder. A shattered glass doesn't reassemble itself. Heat flows from hot to cold, never the other way around. This increase in entropy is what gives us the sensation of time moving forward. But even entropy isn't a fundamental rule of physics, it's just a statistical pattern. There's nothing in the laws of physics that says time can't run backward. It's just that, statistically, it's incredibly unlikely. What does all of this mean? If time isn't real, does anything ever really begin or end? Are we just experiencing a series of frozen moments? Is free will an illusion? Are we just moving through a predetermined sequence of events with no real choices? Maybe Dr. Carter's message arrived before she sent it, because in a sense, she already had. Maybe she was always there, in that moment, because that moment exists forever. Maybe all moments do. If time isn't real, then the past, present, and future aren't separate. They're all happening at once. Which means, in some strange way, you might still be there, experiencing your first day of school, or your last breath, or a moment you haven't even lived yet. And if that's true, what does that make us? Thank you so much for listening into this episode of Parallel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel grow its audience. Until the next episode, remember, one reality is never enough.